Hello, everybody. This is the kubeadm office hours. Today is the 11th of November, 2020. I'm going to share the agenda document in chat. Please add your names to the list of participants and your agenda topics. Okay, do we have any new meeting participants that wish to introduce themselves to the group?
I can say hello. My name is Brian Topping. I'm a Kubernetes at kubeadm user. Just saw this pop up in my schedule, so thought I would come by and say hello.
Thanks for joining, Brian. All right. Moving to the PSAs, I added some items here. The first one is that we're merging the PR to the initial phase PR to rename the master label and taint that kubeadm uses to control plane. As some of you may know, this is going to be a multi-stage effort that will span across multiple releases of kubeadm. And if you look at the PR, you can see a link to the CAP that describes the change in more detail. We have an action requirement, action required for 120, which is quite detailed. Users have to perform some actions to start adapting to this change and the future changes we are going to make. I already announced this to the kubeadm Slack channel and the sequence lifecycle channel. If somebody else thinks that I should announce it more widely, let me know. Do we have any comments about this?
Yes, I had a look over the kubernetes.io site yesterday, and I noticed that the word master in master node has been changed to control plane node. And we've dropped the use of the term compute for compute node, which is something we did discuss over the course of the last few weeks. And it seems that we're now referring to any non-control plane node as just a node. Is that our general concurrence and understanding here as well? I'm just wondering.
So nodes that host control plane components in kubeadm, we refer to them as control plane nodes.
Yes.
This is not, later in the meeting, I'm going to talk about like a potential small amend to the kubeadm docs to talk about the new label. In terms of other nodes, we refer to them as worker nodes. And
not any longer. We were talking about changing worker node to refer to them as compute nodes, but it seems that the website kubernetes.io has now dropped the term compute and just refers to every node as a node and only uses the prefix of control plane when it is running the control plane components.
Do you have a reference for this discussion?
Yes, indeed. I will pull it up and I will drop it in the chat here.
Sure.
Give me 1 second.
Yes. So compute node, we never use this in the kubeadm. We also don't really have worker node in our user output. So a worker node is something that we, the developers, call the node that is not a control plane node. But we also do it in the documentation. If the maintainers of the kubernetes.io website want to change the kubeadm docs, they will eventually get back to us. But I don't think we have an action here to perform right now. But yeah, please give me a link to the PR or an issue that you've seen about this, Fabrizio.
I was just adding that probably we have somewhere in the documentation where we talk about worker nodes.
Yeah, I already mentioned that. By the way, you're very quiet. I cannot hear you. But yes, I can actually search for this right now if you want. So I can do a quick query. I'm pretty sure we talk about worker nodes in the kubeadm docs. But if this is changing, we will adapt to it. But worker is pretty much everywhere. You can see there are at least 200 references currently.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But that was why it was so surprising to see that on the website. I'm trying to locate it right now. Just bear with me for a moment.
Sure, we're going to move to the next topic in the meantime.
That's fine. Do that. We can come back if you don't mind.
All right. So code freeze.
I'm sorry, I found it.
All right. Please share it.
There's the link to the page.
But worker node is still here.
Ah, just have a look at the diagram.
Well, sure, but it's just a node, but worker node is still in the document, so I don't see a problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, if we have new guidance, we will change it. Currently, I follow the CNCF / Kubernetes group that was created to remove some potentially offensive terminology from the project. I joined their meetings. I watched the mailing list. If we stop referring to worker nodes as workers, we are going to adapt to that. But I have not heard anything about it yet. Yes, it should be a ADR, which basically means architectural design record. We do those for every single rename. So if you have a worker, we have to have a replacement in such a document. Like, what do we change worker with? And we did such an ADR document for the master rename. I believe if you look at the kubeadm cap, you can find the link for the ADR itself. It's somewhere in there. All right, moving to next topic, code freezes tomorrow. I think we merged everything that we had for this release, which isn't much, but we are like mostly everybody is quite busy lately. I have some topics around the docs updates. This is the first one is our upgrade documentation. It's kind of the update we have to do for the upgrade docs is very verbose every release. And at some point, we got a recommendation from the docs team to drop our standard output that we print in the docs and try to consolidate everything to be based on a simple version variable instead of printing such a detailed output. And I agree with that, and I can execute this change before the docs freeze happens. Fabrizio, what do you think about this?
I think that it is acceptable. So not having all the outputs, but some example, even if they are not up to date with the latest version, in my opinion, makes sense.
Yeah, we can just print the last bit of the message, which is congratulations, you upgraded your cluster. Okay, so the other bit here that I have to do is something that Ruhit said did a separate PR, but I closed it. He executed on a certain kubeadm item that we had to reorder the upgrade process to basically let me recollect what we have to uncordon cordon and uncordon around the kubelet upgrade. Previously we were doing that around the control plane upgrade, which is not really needed there. So I will execute on this change as well. in the same PR. I'm not going to touch the kube proxy problem here in this release because it's a complicated one. All right, so the answer, yes. The reference docs upgrade is a separate PR. It's still it's pretty much updates all the commands that we have, either graduated or deprecated. It's on hold because the docs maintainers want this to be merged pretty much last minute before we make any changes. It's also tied to a separate process that takes the kubeadm source code in a separate repository and generates the kubeadm docs. So it requires some synchronization. Okay, so this is the question I have here is related to the page we have for kubeadm cluster creation. Basically, we have a create a cluster with kubeadm page. Let me try to open this. So this is related to the master control plane rename that we started executing on. I think somewhere in here we have something about the taint. Yes, so this is removing the taint if you want to do control plane node isolation, which is pretty much running workloads on the control plane node. So the question I have here is, should we possibly mention in this version of the docs for 120 that we now add the new label in parallel? I think it's a good idea.
In my opinion, it is not necessary because here we are talking about removing the taint and we don't have yet a new taint.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the label on the nodes because we now have two different labels. I think, let me see. So we have some output here. We say that we label the nodes. Should we, potentially I can remove this output as well because it becomes out of date with the addition of the new label. I can remove this output, only say like the last bit here, like, okay, congratulations, your cluster is created successfully. And I wonder if we should discuss parts of the cap in the creation of the on this page. Like, should we say, okay, we now labeled?
I'm personally I'm -1. I don't want. This is the quick start page. I don't want to give too many details. We will give detail when it is the case.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. Does anybody else have comments about that?
Yeah, I think maybe just doing a ... your control plane is initialized and remove the sort of changeable output that you get at the top.
Yeah. This output is quite dynamic. Even if we don't change that much in kubeadm, we still touch a little bit here and there, and so it's out of date. Okay, this is another action item for me. I will rename the PR and change the scope of it later. Okay. So these are the updates about the docs. CoreDNS is moving to a new version. There's a PR for that. I don't see any major changes around the CoreDNS migration code that we have in kubeadm. The diff is pretty simple. We just include a new version of the migration library without any changes to kubeadm itself. But apparently the image is still not pushed to GCR, so this PR is blocked. I I heard from Rajan Sandeep that he already pushed the image via the promotion process, but the image is still not a GCR. In any case, I added the 120 milestone, so we can potentially move to a new version of Core DNS. Also, I asked if we have any notable breaking changes, but he did not respond to that. My assumption is probably no. In any case, this is the 1.8 upgrade of Core DNS. Any comments on that? Do you have to do anything in the Cluster API project, Fabrizio, Nadir?
Yeah, we will. We'll need to do the same thing essentially with the migration, bump the library, etc.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Lubomir, I have a question. It is only an upgrade of the library version, or it is also an upgrade of the Core DNS version shipped with Kubernetes?
So this is an upgrade of the Core DNS version that kubeadm will deploy, and also an upgrade of the a library that we use for migration. Nowadays, the two things are pretty much tied together. That's why, like one day we want to separate it out of kubeadm, either on some sort of a add-on or add-on operator, so that we don't have to vendor this in Kubernetes and kubeadm. Okay, so this is the last PSA I had. We can move to the discussion topics. So this one is a bit complicated, but it's not very a technical topic, but we have to make a decision. We potentially have to involve other SIGs into it. So there's a chance that we have to defer this to a mailing list discussion where we also include SIG API machinery, SIG scheduling, and other component config owning SIGs, because we have a bit of a, how do I say, it's a bit of a mess. We have different ways how we defined exported fields over API types. So Quiming, who is from IBM SIG docs, he has been a contributor for SIG docs for a very long time. He opened a PR for kubeadm with the idea to change the way we print fields over, print comments over the fields in our public API types. And also he applies some changes to how we organize the God docs of our API. I think some of these are basic formatting changes, like, okay, this is adding bold text here. Here we have some quoting around the fields. I think you also added some, okay, so this is like a better example, separated objects, gave some example commands. I think he extends on the docs, which I haven't reviewed fully. I need to review like this in very detailed way to make sure we are not making any discrepancies. So quoting, refactoring, restructuring, potential rewarding here and there. I think he also added some examples here, new examples. Yeah, I think he's extended on the examples of the cluster configuration, component config. So this is mostly fine, but then I saw that he's also, okay, this is changing the indentation, I guess, okay. But then I saw he also modifies the API itself. Now, I really want the kubeadm API to comply with golint. This is my main argument. When we execute the linter, I want this to be cluster configuration as a comment on top of the cluster configuration field. And like part of the mess we have in Kubernetes nowadays is that every single component is doing something differently. For instance, the kubelet here, it has the cluster configuration as lowercase, camel case. So you cannot run a linter on it. It will break. And currently, a fun fact is that we don't lint any of the API packages because of CodeGen, the code generator we have for Kubernetes. Probably the Nadir and Fabrizio know about this, is that it generates names, function names with underscores. So that's not linter compliant. We disable the linting, and we also, this results in a bit of a mess in terms of how we comment on the fields. And there's a long-standing issue in the CodeGen repository. I think it was created in 2017 to fix the linter. To fix the generator. But this is like this is a cross-sig problem. The code generator is owned by the API machinery. We have to contact them, tell them, okay, we have to fix this at some point. But also, a question for this group I had is like, how do we want to standardize the comments above fields? You can see here that Quimink is adding quotes around some of the fields. He's also overcasing them. And how do we target both a developer and an operator of the cluster? How do we make this easy to consume? Quimink is saying, okay, I don't care about the developer. I want to only show the JSON name. But there's a problem with that, because sometimes the JSON name differs from the name of the field in Golang. So I think I had a proposal with, just a second, Fabrizio, to show by example. I said that maybe we should just add both into the comment, but still comply with Golint. So here is what I said. We can have some field which is Golint compliant, and then you can include the JSON in parentheses. And I said that we have to decide for Kubernetes as a whole, how do we do this for the public types? Fabrizio?
So if I got it right, the origin of this discussion is that SIGDocs want to include the API documentation into the website. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so my point here is that we are talking about Godoc. So Godoc is for developers and should be Golink compliant. If they are planning to do these basically generate Godoc and import in the website, in my opinion, should be part of this process to transforming Godoc in admin doc. So replace, for instance, name of the fields with the JSON tag. Because otherwise we are in basically moving a concern of the website inside the code, which don't seems really nice to me. But say that I think that I will accept every decision that is taken, let me say, across all the SIGs, and I don't want Kubernetes to be the guinea pig for this.
Yes, I think Quimink, I agree with your statement, yes. I think Quimink set the PR for kubeadm because he knows that we are more active and we can respond immediately on the discussion. I do agree. This is Godocs. We can have the fields, and somewhere in this long discussion, I suggested the same thing as you did. We can have mutation code that takes the comments above fields and mutates them to make them, acceptable by administrators. And I think Quimink is not happy with this idea, but I still have to confirm with him. Do we have any more comments? I think I should open a mailing list discussion with everybody.
What about having a meeting with Quimin or people in SIGDocs and discuss the topic, so we can present our concern and then we can try to find a middle ground that makes everyone happy?
So he's in China. He normally does not join the SIGDoc meetings, and he's in charge of all the work that is related to docs generation. It's a bit difficult to arrange this type of meeting.
Yeah, let's try. We are in Europe, so it's not impossible to have a meeting, a dedicated meeting with him. So let's see if he is available to discuss this. I think that it will be easier if we talk instead of starting a discussion that can degenerate quickly.
Okay, so you're proposing to talk to him before the mailing list discussion.
Yeah, I would like to better understand his concern.
Okay. Do you want to make your comments, the same comment you added to this
Yeah,
agenda topic?
I
And
will
also,
I will add a comment and also tell in the comment that we can discuss. It's better that we can we meet to discuss this.
okay, this seems fine. And the idea it will be to keep the kubeadm godocs with Pascal case, uppercase fields everywhere.
Yeah, in my opinion, the goal is to keep Godot for developers and to replace basically field names with JSON tags for the public documentation, if this is the goal of the documentation.
Yeah, this is a very nice idea. I like this. Also, if we go to if we type Kubernetes API in Google, it will give you the API reference, I think. And if you go to the API reference, you will see how something somewhere is mutating the fields. Let me find a pod spec, for instance. Or let's go to the daemon set. You can see that something is mutating the field to be JSON. Actually, it's not mutating. It's taking the JSON field here, but it's still printing the Pascal case name from the comment. This is basically the description above the field.
Yeah, but, that means that they already have this machinery somewhere. So I don't know if there are some technical problems to reuse the same machinery for the API documentation for kubeadmin and the other component config.
Nadir, do you know what they are using for this?
No, I'm kind of interested because it'd be good to have on cluster API as well. Like it's pain reading through the API types to figure out what to configure. I would love the same generator. If we can reuse the generator, whatever it is, be great.
Yeah. I wonder if it's something in Kubernetes that is just hidden and we don't know about it. Yeah. Nadir, you can also ask this question in the thread that we have here. Basically, just ask how are you generating this?
Yeah,
I'm also
I think
interested.
that's the way forward.
Yeah, I can also ask this right now. Okay. I think this is a good way forward. Thank you for the discussion. We can continue on private before we make this a public discussion with the other six. Do you have any more comments on this? Okay, so the next topic is something that pretty much was created as an idea a couple of days ago. Currently, kubeadm runs the kubeproxy deployment as a daemon set. This didn't sound very good, but kubeproxy is a daemon set currently in kubeadm. And this creates some problems around upgrades, both mutable and immutable. By mutable upgrades, I mean when you execute the commands which are kubeadm upgrade apply or kubeadm upgrade node. These are the commands that support the so-called in-place upgrade. When you basically you have a set of nodes, you replace the Kubernetes version that is running on them. And currently, this is a problem. There is a problem around the kube proxy upgrade because we call kubeadm upgrade apply, it upgrades kube proxy, and it upgrades it as a daemon set, which upgrades kube proxy on all the nodes, including the worker nodes. But there's a problem where the kubelet on the worker nodes should be the same version as kube proxy, so we have a skew problem for a period of time. The same problem exists with immutable upgrades, where you join new nodes to the cluster, but you so you add a node that is like version 120 to the 119 cluster. You have a daemon set that is running kube proxy version 119, but your kubelets on the new nodes are joining with like a new version. It is, I mean, this is not exactly how it happens, but there's also the skew problem there. And I believe there was discussions about running a couple of daemon sets, one with the old version, one with the new version, to solve the immutable upgrade skew problem. But this is like it's far from ideal. And somebody on this particular kubeadm ticket asked, like, why are you not running kubeproxy as a static pod on all the nodes? And first of all, I would like to clarify for the viewers of this meeting and the viewers of the vote that this is a very breaking change, because people already have assumptions around how kubeproxy is deployed in kubeadm. So we're just discussing the topic. We are not planning to execute on it directly. But basically, the idea is if we have a kubeproxy as a daemon set on all the nodes, it can consume the kubeproxy config map from the cluster as a volume. You can set up kubeproxy the same way you're setting up the daemon set, but except you can run it as a pod static pod managed by the kubelet on all the nodes. And potentially, if you skip the deployment of kubeproxy, the workers can check for the lack of a kubeproxy config map. So when you join these workers, they can decide to not deploy the static pod for the kubeproxy. So it works. Then in terms of deployment, it works. When you do upgrades, you can upgrade the kubelet. You can stop the kubelet, upgrade the kubeproxy manifest, upgrade the kubelet, and restart the kubelet, which will give you a kubeproxy and kubelet with matching versions. So this works for upgrades pretty nicely. It also it solves this problem, but how do we solve the problem that we are going to break user assumptions who are patching the kubeproxy daemon set to apply changes? It's a very breaking change. I wanted to get feedback from this group, but potentially this is also a discussion for the sequence lifecycle meeting itself. Yes, Fabrizio.
Yeah, so as I commented on the issue, I like the idea of the static pod because we already went through this for the other pods, and basically it makes a node, let me say, more self-consistent, and this play really nice with mutable upgrade and immutable upgrade as well. So I like the idea, but I agree with you. The changes is complicated, especially for defining an upgrade path for the people, and it should be it requires deprecation and communication. So this issue requires designs, and it's something that I would like to put in the agenda for the next cycle. So try to have a cap for these.
Yes, it definitely requires a cap. and the deprecation itself is going to be a bit complicated. Like, how do we deprecate, introduce the static pot in parallel to the daemon set, which is not going to work. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I agree that we can have this at least something like a cap for the next cycle and see who can work on that as well, because it will require some effort. More comments on this? I think I had something else here that it's also, it becomes kind of peculiar around the situation with static pods, becomes peculiar in terms of instance specific configuration, because currently the daemon set blocks you from being able to apply instance specific config. But once you do this with static pods, we, as you know, we have this gap around instance specific config. How do you feed instance specific configuration? The only way today is to feed flags to the kubeproxy binary in the static pod. That's fine, but we may have to define some sort of a policy, because to my understanding, if you apply a bunch of flags to a certain kubeproxy instance, but don't apply it to the rest of the instances, it will fail, and we're not going to tell you why it failed. Maybe we should also at least document that we don't recommend instance-specific changes to kubeproxy. I also have to consult SIG Windows about having multiple operating systems in the cluster in terms of kubeproxy, because it obviously runs differently on Windows. So, like I said, there is some requirement in terms of like at least policy or / documentation how we do static pods, and it definitely needs a cap and further discussion. Okay. So let me add some notes here quickly. All right, Fabrizio, you have the next item.
Okay, if there are no other priorities, I would like to show something about the operator and more or less related to the discussion for the kubeadmin rope. If you let me share, Lubomir.
Okay, just a second. Do you know how much time you're going to need?
10 minutes is fine.
Oh, Zoom is preventing me from making you a host. Okay. Right?
Okay. We will stop, continue, okay. Why can't I share the desktop?
Yeah, you cannot share desktop. You have to share a window.
Okay, let's go quickly. So I will show these are my notes. So what we are kind of discussing for the kubeadmin roadmap is to change a little bit the kubeadmin architecture. Today we have only a CLI. In the future, we are discussing to have three separated parts. The CLI for the day one, so for init and join. So basically, CLI is responsible to transform a machine into a node, but then the CLI get out of the picture, and we are planning to use an operator to manage the cluster. So manage the cluster will be fully declarative. This is what we are discussing. Behind the scene, there will be a library, which will be the building block for both for the CLI, the operator, but also something that can be used by other tools. So I skip the reason behind this. We discussed something in the past, and I move a little bit on how I'm thinking the operator should work. So today, basically, when the operator does init, it basically do two things. It creates something on the machine. Here I'm using the static pod manifest as example, and also it creates something in the cluster as soon as possible. The kubeadm config map. Kubeadm config map is basically the cluster configuration from kubeadm, but it is basically embedded into a config map, which is not nice, not really Kubernetes way of defining objects. So for the operator, what I think that we need is to basically extract the kubeadm, the cluster configuration from the config, from being an embedded type into the config map, and basically create our own CRDs, which I call it cluster configuration because I have a lot of fantasy for names. And then the operator is basically responsible to reconcile, to continuously reconcile the cluster configuration. So it will watch nodes if the cluster configuration changes, it will go to the nodes and try to reconcile them, or the way around. If someone changes the nodes, it will detect that the cluster configuration is different, and it will force the node to be consistent with the cluster configuration. How this reconciliation should happen? Basically, the idea that I'm following or prototyping is the following: is that whenever the operator will find a difference, the operator will create a job that is a job which I'm trying to keep not privileged. So a job that simply mounts the etc Kubernetes folder on the node. And this job will be responsible to rewrite static pod manifest, so to apply the changes, to reconcile the status of the static pod manifest with the status of the cluster configuration. Everything okay till now?
Yes, this is great. I wanted to share something that I think me and Tim said Claire both agree with, is that config maps originally were created to exactly host configuration. So, but yeah, here this the new way.
The new way. Okay. And the last bit of this is that for the very same reason that we discussed just before, is that while we are during this way, I think that it's time for us to start reasoning about a cluster configuration, but also a node-specific configuration, so an instance-specific configuration as well. And so this is what I'm working on. So I will show you a simple demo of what I'm playing with. This should be this one. Okay, you see the screen now?
Yes.
Fine. Should apply this one, probably. Okay. Clear. So basically what I have here, I have a kind cluster with 3 control planes. So if I do docker ps, you see I have a control plane 2, control plane 3. Okay. Also in the cluster, I have added my cluster configuration. So let's assume I've done init, I've installed the operator, and I have my cluster configuration, which is called, the name of the cluster is called kind because I'm using kind. And this cluster configuration basically is defining the spec of my node. For now, cluster configuration is really simple. In this prototype, I have only scheduler extra arg. Now is empty. That means that I'm not applying any additional change on top of the kubeadm default. Now what I'm doing is that I basically connect to all the 3 nodes, and I start watching for the scheduler pods, and I basically search for a flag, the verbosity flag, which kubeadm does not set by default. So for now, there is no verbosity flag for the kubelet. Sorry, I lost the command. Okay, so here I'm looking at the static pod manifest on the node, and none of them have the flag because they are plain vanilla kubeadm. So if now I edit this object, so edit my cluster configuration, which is called kind, as we saw before, and I go down there and I decide that I want to add an extra arg for my scheduler, which is verbosity, and I will set verbosity to 1. Okay, then the operator, cross the finger, should do his work. So it should start basically reconciling by adding the flag to the nodes in order, hopefully. So let's see if it is working. Okay, in the meantime, you see the first node got the flag. The operator is processing, by default, is processing node in a sequential way. So if a node fails, the operator stops and let the admin to check what is happening. Okay, now also the second node got the static pod changed, and hopefully we will get the third one. Behind the scene, kubeadm is basically created three different jobs, one for each node, and doing and basically applying the change. Okay, also the third job got completed. So this is the operator reconciling the cluster configuration with the static pod manifest on each node with the cluster configuration. The last bit of that I want to show, and then maybe we have some time for the question, that as presented before, I'm also having the node configuration. So, and if I edit one of these node configuration, and I keep the first one, as you can see, where is the spec? Down. Okay. As you can see, the node configuration now is basically getting the cluster configuration. So it is not applying anything different than on top of the cluster configuration. I can go there, similarly to before. I decided that for this specific node, I want the verbosity set to 2. And if I do so, another job will start, and hopefully we will get only this one set to 2 immediately. Or hopefully. So let's see. Okay, there are jobs starting. I have some problem in my prototype. Sometimes it does not detect a job running and it retries, but this is something that I have to fix. But at the end, you get the result. So this is the gist of the operator. And that's it. I would like to get some comments on it.
I mean, this is great. I saw obviously the first prototype of the operator. I think the whole idea of allowing the operator to manage instance-specific node configuration is great. This will allow great flexibility for the users. Currently, we treat control plane nodes as replicas, which we have seen complaints from the users about it. Overall, the operator pattern will definitely help to change the cluster the way the user wants. I have, I think, a couple of questions. The first one is, like, the operator, we still don't plan to bundle it as part of the kubeadm installation as an image that we have to pull, right?
Oh, I didn't get it so far in the design. My idea is that kubeadm, when doing init, will install the operator YAML, and the operator YAML will fetch the operator image from some repository, from gcr.io, or from a customized a repository that the user can customize. This is my idea, but it's something that I still have to explore. I will suggestions are welcome for this topic.
Yeah, we have to enable promotion of the image, and we have to build it from somewhere, from the kubeadm repo maybe. Yeah, this is the first part. We have to figure out how we deploy the controller in a air-gapped environment. The cluster configuration as a CRD complies with the pattern to basically have a custom resource for it in general, but it's also can be in a config, but you know, if you have a node configuration that is obviously a CRD, because you have multiple nodes, it makes sense that also the cluster configuration is a CRD. So yeah, I think at some point I might surrender into the whole CRD business for kubeadm, but I have to say that I really don't like the amount of boilerplate operators generated to the project. It's just such a mess. So much YAML, cert manager, and we have to trim everything down, everything that we don't need, because the controller will be so simple. Using Clad Go, you don't need all the boilerplate that controller runtime gives you. So I would really like to see, like, how do we talk about the implementation details around this?
Yeah, next time, if you want, we can, or in a separate meeting, we can have a deep dive on how I'm implementing these pros and cons, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. This is like, this was more of a comment. Yeah, we should definitely have this meeting. Another question is about the CRDs. Like, what do you envision we're going to have in the status for the cluster configuration and node configuration?
Oh, for the time being, I'm using the status for with a set of conditions that basically report if we are in sync with the underlying object, and reports how the job is performing, if it is failing, if it is running, and so on and so forth. So I'm using the status mainly for conditions. The idea is that the source of truth, I don't really need the status to have information in the status, because the source of truth is what the node is in the node. So the controller should look at the node for understanding what is the current status of Kubernetes. Or in case of static pod, the controller looks at the static pod in the Kubernetes API.
Yeah, I agree. The status, it's also an implementation detail. We can discuss the status when it comes down to the proposal, and like when we discuss on the cap potential.
If I might add, it might be interesting for the status to include some of the, because there might be some overlays of configuration, that what the effective configuration is for the node. And so that you'd be able to then say, oh, I just want this one to be different, like in your demonstration, which is really cool. But you'd be able to very quickly say, oh, okay, here's what the effective, I don't really care where the genealogy of these configurations came from, but that I want this one to be changed, and it can go in very quickly and do that.
This makes sense. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
All right. I guess we can follow up on the operator in another meeting, being the Kubernetes office hours, or we can schedule a separate meeting for that. Does anybody else have more comments on this? We have 2 minutes. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.